Welcome to today's Explainer. So, today we're diving into some absolutely incredible concepts from Robert Dilts' work on neuro-linguistic programming, specifically looking at his groundbreaking book, Sleight of Mouth. Look, if you've ever felt completely stuck in a conversation, kind of paralyzed by your own negative thoughts, or just totally unsure of how to handle harsh criticism, you are in the exact right place. We're going to unpack exactly how you can consciously use your language to quite literally reframe your reality. Let's get into it. To kick things off, let's think about the core metaphor of this whole framework. You know how a close-up magician uses sleight of hand to pull off a physical illusion, like making a coin disappear right in front of your face? Well, we can actually use sleight of mouth to alter conversational reality. And no, it's not about tricking or manipulating anyone. It's about the very real fact that one perfectly timed phrase can create a dramatic, almost magical shift in how we perceive things. It changes the very assumptions we use to build our reality. And this idea, it's grounded in a pretty profound historical truth. Sigmund Freud himself hit the nail on the head when he said words and magic were in the beginning one and the same thing, right? In our modern day-to-day lives, we usually just treat language as a tool to describe things. But language doesn't just describe human experience, it actually dictates human behavior. Words can drag us down into utter despair, or they can sweep an entire audience to new heights. They are, for all intents and purposes, a literal form of magic. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the magic of words, then explore why maps aren't the territory. Third, we'll look at framing your experience. Fourth, the power of reframing. And we'll wrap up with transforming your inner critic. All right, part one, the magic of words. Let's look at how specific words act as incredibly powerful interventions. To really wrap our heads around this magic, listen to these wild real-life anecdotes. Picture this. A police officer shows up at a terrifying domestic violence call. A TV has literally been smashed through a window, and an enraged man is screaming inside. But instead of busting the door down with force, the officer knocks and just says, "Television repairman." The sheer absurd unexpectedness of those two words completely diffuses the tension. It brings laughter and allows the officer to step in safely. Or, how about this one? A delusional psychiatric patient firmly believes he's Jesus Christ. Instead of arguing with him, a brilliant doctor says, "Well, I understand you have experience as a carpenter. We could sure use your assistance building our new recreation room." The patient agrees, starts integrating with the others, and eventually is able to leave the hospital. And finally, think of a young kid wanting to quit baseball because he thinks he's a bad ball player. His coach looks at him and says, "There are no bad ball players, only people who are not confident in their ability to learn." That single sentence flips the kid's identity from a failure to a learner, and he goes on to become a super valuable player. Now that is powerful. Moving right along to part two, maps aren't the territory. We need to understand the illusion of reality. This whole thing basically boils down to a massive foundational principle coined by Alfred Korzybski. He said, the map is not the territory. What does that mean? Well, we human beings don't actually experience reality directly. Nope. We experience it through our own internal neurolinguistic maps. The crucial takeaway here is that people who are super creative and effective at handling life's curveballs aren't living in some magically better reality than the rest of us. They just have richer, wider mental maps, and that allows them to see way more options when they're standing in the exact same territory as someone else. Basically, our primary sensory input, what we physically see, hear, and feel, is really just raw material. That data gets filtered upward into our internal theories, our descriptions, our personal meanings. We take pure sensory experience and we instantly build a secondary layer of symbolic maps on top of it. And here's the kicker. It's those secondary maps that actually dictate how we act and how we feel about the world. Which brings us to part three, framing your experience. Let's see how your vocabulary brings reality into focus. So the big idea here is that words literally put a frame around our experiences. They drag certain details right into the sharp foreground while completely blurring other details into the background. Let's try a quick experiment. I want you to say these two phrases in your head right now. First, think, "It is sunny today, but it will rain tomorrow." How does that feel? Kind of a bummer, right? The word "but" completely wipes out the sunshine. Your brain is now entirely focused on the impending rain. Okay, now let's switch it up. It is sunny today, even though it will rain tomorrow. Notice the shift? Suddenly, the sunshine stays front and center in your mind. The rain becomes just background noise. The exact same facts are on the table, but simply swapping a couple of words has completely shifted your reality. All right, part 4, the power of reframing. We're going to zoom out to change the meaning. Imagine a tiny fish swimming along, about to get swallowed whole by a much bigger fish. This represents what we call a narrow problem frame. When we're stuck in a mental frame this small, we feel totally trapped. We're laser focused on the immediate threat right on our tail. Literally all we can see is the danger. But what happens if we grab our mental camera lens and just zoom out? Look at this. The big fish is completely oblivious to the fact that an even bigger, massive fish is creeping up right behind it. Expanding our perspective fundamentally changes the context and the meaning of the entire situation. Suddenly, the problem isn't just the immediate obstacle in front of us, we start seeing the much broader system at play. And this leads us to an absolute game changer of a shift that you can start using right now. When you're operating out of a problem frame, your brain naturally asks questions like, what is wrong? Why is this a problem? Whose fault is it? It's exhausting. But if you actively shift into an outcome frame, the questions completely flip. You start asking, what do I actually want? How can I get it? What resources are available to me? Just by changing the questions you ask yourself, you shift your entire reality from desperately seeking blame to actively seeking solutions. Finally, part 5, transforming your inner critic. This is the grand finale, where we turn a spoiler into a trusted advisor. So, you know those harsh critics, whether it's someone at work or that voice in your own head, they almost always operate strictly inside that problem frame we just talked about. They sound super negative, but here's the secret. Deep down, all behavior actually has a positive intention. The trick is to play detective. You have to uncover that positive intention by translating their limiting negative words into positive reformulations. So if a critic says your idea is too expensive, what they're positively trying to do is ensure the plan is affordable. If they claim it's a waste of time, their positive goal is actually to use available resources wisely. And if they shoot you down by calling you unrealistic, they really just want a plan that is concrete and achievable. Make sense? Honestly, just redefining one single attacking word can open up totally new, productive channels for conversation. Take a heavy word like expensive. If someone throws that at your project, you can gently redefine it. You might say, well, do you feel this is overpriced based on the current market, or are you concerned that we're unable to afford it right now? Both of those phrases overlap with the idea of being expensive, but they carry completely different implications. Overpriced means we need to sit down and look at the value. Unable to afford means we need to open up the budget. Boom! You've completely bypassed a defensive argument and jumped straight into collaborative problem solving. Okay, so here is your literal 3-step playbook to disarm any critic and turn them into an advisor. Step 1, identify the exact criticism. Let's say they're complaining your proposal is too superficial. Step 2, uncover that positive intention. What do they really want? Well, they probably want deep, lasting change. Step 3, this is where the magic happens. Ask the how question. You say to them, okay, how can we be sure that this proposal addresses the key issues necessary for deep and lasting change? See what you did there? You just scooped up their objection and turned it into a collaborative how question. You're no longer fighting across the table. You're sitting on the same side, working on the puzzle together. We've seen today how language isn't just describing our world, it's the map that literally shapes our territory. We've seen how just widening a frame or slightly redefining a word can completely alter the outcome of a situation. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a challenge. What limiting belief are you going to reframe today? Seriously, take a close look at the language you've been using on yourself. Turn this linguistic magic inward, hunt down the positive intention hiding right behind your own inner critic, and ask yourself, how? Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I can't wait to see how you go out and transform your own conversational reality.